Hello everyone. In this session we are going to discuss library functions and especially math functions. In previous session we had discussed what is function, why function needed and required. So first of all we'll see what are different types of function. Functions can be categorized in two categories, that is the library functions or built-in functions, or we can say predefined function that is incorporated in C language. That can be simply called and that can be simply used by the users. They should know how to use, they should know syntax or prototype the function, then it's very simple to use and call them. And those functions are incorporated in one particular header file that has to be included in your program, then only the user will be able to use those functions. So library functions, some example of library functions are given here, that is scanf, printf, string length and power function. So these are the scanf and printf functions are one of the most basic functions which we use. Almost every program need and requires these library functions for formatted input and output. Scanf is used for the input and printf is used for the displaying some content, some messages on screen. And user-defined functions, this is a set of statements, instructions that will be written at one location in your program and which can be called, which can be executed. Once that will be called, that will be executed from that particular location. So it will be written at one location and every time one call is made, that is called as the function call, then it will execute, it will perform those necessary tasks. So predefined functions these are the built-in functions and those functions are contained in the header file which extension is .h like stdio.h, conio.h, math.h, string.h. To use these functions we must include the header file in our program. For example, for using the printf function, we have to, that is the standard library functions to display formatted output on the screen. For this, if you want to use printf function, then we have to include stdio.h header file in our program. Then only will be able to use. Otherwise, if you have not included stdio.h header file in our program, then we will get an error. Function should have a prototype because we are using printf, but our program, our compiler doesn't know from where the printf has come. To get it identified, to get it recognized, we must include stdio.h header file. The similar way, if you want to use a sqrt function that computes the square root of a given number, we have to include math.h file, header file. So math functions, there are numerous math functions that performs the mathematical operations like finding the square root, power of a given number, then exponential function, cosine functions, tan functions, sine functions, cosine functions. Numerous functions are there which can be computed. So those are ready-made. Simply we have to include a math.h header file in our program and we have to call those functions from math.h header file and that will execute the task, that will perform the task. So CBRT, it computes and returns the cube root of a number. Ceil function, it computes and returns the nearest integer greater than argument. Whatever argument which we have provided, just greater than integer value. If you have given one fractional value, that will be taken to its next integer value. So that task is done by ceil function. Cos function, as we know, there is a mathematical function. This finds the cos value of one particular argument which is provided. exp function, it returns the exponential raised to the argument. Floor function. In floor function, we compute and returns, it compute and returns the nearest integer less than argument. So it is lowered. That's why the name is floor. Just whatever the argument we have used, for example, we have used 7.1, then it will return the 7. If you are using, in case of seal, if you are using 7.5, then it will become 8. So there is a seal and floor function. Log function compute and returns the natural logarithm of an argument. Log 10 function, it computes and returns the base 10 logarithm of an argument. Power function, it computes and returns the power of a number. Sine function computes and returns the sine of a number. And squarity function, it returns the square root of an entered number or a given number. So we'll see two functions here. We'll discuss in this session two functions, that is the square root and power function, which will give a better understanding how to use the function, how to call them, and how they work. So here a square root function, it computes, it takes one integer, it takes one value, and on that value it returns the square root of that number, and this is supported by math.h file, header file. Syntax or function prototype of square2, how it's being defined, how it will be used. So it takes one argument, it takes one single argument that is in double data type. Double means long floating value, very big floating value, and returns the square root argument also in the double, that is the floating point value. How the square root will be used in our program, how it will be called. So we can compute the value of a square root by providing the one argument value x. Suppose that we have created a variable x that is passed to the square root function, and whatever the value is returned from a square root function, that will be stored and that will be assigned in variable a. Or simply we can call a square root x, and that directly will print in our printf statement, formatted printf statement. In mathematics, a square root is written as under root x, and in C programming, a square root is computed as a square root of x. In parentheses, we provide the argument that is known as the argument also, that is known as the parameter also. So we'll see one example of sqrt function. So here we are that is hash include st.h. It will include the header file of a standard input output, which will use printf and scanf function. Second is the hash include math.h, which we are going to illustrate math.h function. So in after that we'll start our main function. The function starts here. We have created one variable x, that is a double data type, long floating value, and we have initialized 16. And second value we have created variable, we have created square root, in which we will store the square root. So simply we are calling the function, this rate shows sqrt is equal to sqrt of x. So it will, x is passed to the sqrt function, it will compute, it will process on that, that will go to the math.h header file, and what of the steps has to be executed for finding the square root of x, that will be done. And after when the function will return the value, that will be assigned and that will be stored to the sqrt function. Now we are going to print that function. So here printf statement, square root of %lf. lf is used, it is the format specifier of double data type. Square root of %lf is equal to %lf, again double data type, because x is also double and sq root is also double. So square root of %lf is equal to %lf/n, comma x and sq root. So first x will replace first %lf, and sqrt will replace the second %lf, that is after equal to sign. Now output will be like this here, square root of 16.00006 times 0 is equal to 4.6 times 0. We are using another example in the same problem. We have not initialized any variable. We have not created any variable, and simply we are providing one particular value. So printf square root of 5 is equal to %lf/n, and now we are calling the function square root of 5 in printf statement itself. So it will process on that particular parameter or value 5, and it will return the value, and that will be printed in that particular statement. So it's not going to be stored in any another variable. Simply it will be printed with this formatted output printf statement. So the result of second printf statement will be square root of 5 is equal to 2.236068. Now, and next the getch statement. We have given this statement for holding the output screen, return 0, because our main function is not returning any value. That's why we have given the return 0. Now it ends the program. Second is the power function. In this power function, it takes two arguments and return one value. One value is known as the base value, another value is known as the power raised to the base number, and that is also known as the exponent. For example, 2 raised to 3. So 2 is the base value and 3 is the raised to that base number. How it's being used? That is called as a syntax or function prototype of power function. So double power POW function, and it is supplied with the two argument 1 and argument 2. It can be X, it can be Y. Whatever the name we want to give, that can be given, that can be illustrated. So double argument 1, comma double argument 2. So we are passing both argument as double also. The first argument is the base value and the second argument is the power raised to the base value. Another way we can write double POW function or double X, comma double Y. Here the power function takes two arguments, X as a base and Y as a power raised to base. How it will be called? How it will be used in the program? It can be called by the function name and provided in the parenthesis provided with the two arguments, because of the it's a necessary what are the arguments, what are the parameters and what are the values has to be provided. Not less parameters and not more parameters. Exact parameters, exact values or exact arguments has to be supplied to the calling function. So power X, comma Y, it will be computed. X raised to Y, it will be computed and the value will be stored, value will be returned, and that will be stored in variable A. Or simply we can use the power of X, comma Y, that will be simply printed, that will be used in a printf statement without assigning in the second variable. So in mathematics, power of a function is calculated as X raised to Y. It's written like X raised to Y, and in C programming, power of number is computed as a power in parentheses X, comma Y, two parameters. So first one is the base value and second one is the power value. So here the example of the power function, illustration of the power function is, we'll write the program. First we have included the st.h file. Second, we are including the math.h function because we are going to use the power function. So it's mandatory to use the math.h header file. Our main function starts here. We have declared two variables, that is the base, three variables, that is the base, power and result. The base is a value which will input, power is a value which will input, and the computed value will be stored in the result. Enter the value of base number. So here in output it will be printed like this. Enter the value of base number. We have entered the 5, scanf, %lf, comma and %base. So here %lf we have defined the base as a double, so we have to use %lf. That is a long floating point value. Second, and that scanf statement will read the variable value 5, and that will be stored in the base, address of the base. Second, enter the value of power raised to base. So we have entered the 3. Now the next scanf statement, that will read it and it will be stored in the power variable, address of the power. Now our actual computation is done here. So result is equal to POW of base comma power. So base, the value is provided, power value is provided. So base raised to power, and that value 5 raised to 3. 5 raised to 3 will be computed and it will be printed like this. Printf /n final result of %lf %lf is equal to %lf comma base comma power comma result. So we have used here 3 %lf format specifier. So we have to provide the 3 values, 3 variables or 3 parameters that will be printed by the printf statement. First is for the base, second is for the lf is used for the power, and third is used for the result which we have computed. So it will be printed like this. The final result of 5, 6 times 0 raised to 3, 5.6 times 0 raised to 3.00000 is equal to 125.6 times 0. So this is the illustration. Now the program will end here. It will return no value. Our function, the main function, is not return any value to other functions. That's why we have used the return 0. So thanks for watching. If you have liked this video, please subscribe it, share it, like it, and put a comment. And if you want to give any suggestions, and if you have any query, then you can write freely on the w2mdle@gmail.com.